know this already, I like indie games a lot. Most indie games can be just as good gameplay, story, soundtrack and graphics wise than any AAA studio with thousands of dollars and a very large cocaine bucket. All you need to do this is too much spare time and a larger cocaine bucket. Due to this love of indie games, you won't be surprised to hear that I've been playing Hotline Miami 2 Wrong Number, due to the fact that back during the Steam summer sale it was £1.19, which is a tremendous deal for a game I've wanted to play since I finished the first Hotline Miami game. But I don't want to do a sequel to a game that I haven't reviewed yet, so you know what that means? For the first time ever, we've got a double review by a Moron episode. Yay. So, Hotline Miami 1 was released in 2013, and at the time, it was different from most of the other indie games coming out at the time. This was back before pixel art indie games were as prevalent as they are to this day, and this drastic shift from every other indie game caused Hotline Miami to be inundated with positive reviews, leading to an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam, which you can totally see why. So the gameplay of Hotline Miami is a top-down 2D arcade-style shooter. The weapons at your disposal include pistols, SMG, shotguns, metal pipes, baseball bat, fists, broken bottles, and loads of different options that litter the levels, allowing for any play style, whether that be hand-fisted and brutal or careful and methodical. My personal favourite play style in both games is the equivalent to trying to knock down a wall with your head, giving up and then using a sledgehammer, going from being an idiot and trying to brute force it to being smart and camping corners. Now, one of the main features of gameplay is how fragile your character is. The main character Jacket dies in one hit to pretty much every weapon, although I think he can take 2 pistol shots before going down, I'm not really sure. But fear not, this game has no loading screens, meaning you don't have to wait 15 seconds every time you get shot in the face. Just hit R and retry. This means that you can die and restart roughly 3 times a second. The gameplay is honestly great, if a little frustrating, although I think the frustration is lessened by the blood and gore effects. Yes, this game is in 16-bit, yes it's really pixelated, but holy shit on a bike, this game is brutal. The gore effects are complemented perfectly by the sound design. All the melee weapons have meaty impact noises that sound a little bit too realistic, and it really sounds like I'm smashing in someone's head with a lead pipe. The gameplay is also complemented perfectly by the absolutely god-tier soundtrack. Songs like Horse Stepping, Crystals and Hydrogen, all these songs are such bops and I absolutely adore them. I listen to the soundtrack almost daily, and these songs are so easy to listen to, and as soon as Hydrogen by Moon comes on, I instantly just start headbanging. Now, the story of Hotline Miami is kind of weird and quite absent for most of the game. So the entire game is set in the dreams of our main protagonist, Jacket. So each level is set up by Jacket getting a message on his answering machine, back when those were still a thing. The person usually speaks in code. They'll use a fake name and say stuff like, these kids need sorting out, be discreet. This is code for break into a place and go ham. The story is split into different acts, with each act revealing more and more about the story. I don't want to spoil the game too much, so skip to the timestamp on screen if you don't want to spoil the story. So throughout the game, you meet these 3 figures, so I'm going to call the 3 masked men. These guys drip feed the story to you, slowly letting you learn more and more about the story. It's like giving a person a single piece of a puzzle every day until they can make the whole puzzle. By the end of the game, the levels start to break down, almost like a simulation, until Jacket is shot by a home invader and wakes up from a coma he's been in the entire time. So all of what you just played through was one big flashback. Jacket wakes up and immediately goes back to doing what he does best, you know, acts of brutal violence, getting his revenge on the people leaving him those messages. Now, we don't know why Jacket actually went through with the murders. The story is left mostly unfinished, which makes it seem a bit more mysterious. Now, Hotline Miami 2 tries to tie up all these different loose ends, which leads us nicely on to Hotline Miami 2 Wrong Number. Now, this game, it's not as good as Hotline Miami 1. And there are multiple reasons why. This is nowhere near a bad game, far from it. It's still amazing, just not as good as Hotline Miami 1. Let me explain. So the gameplay of Hotline Miami 2 is the same as Hotline Miami 1. Same psychedelic violence, same weapons, but the violence and gore is amped up much more than it was in Hotline Miami 1. The gore in this game honestly borders on excessive, and in my opinion ruins the game a little bit. Hotline Miami 1 had a certain charm to it. Sure, the violence was excessive, but it perfectly fit the theme of this scummy city that you knew nothing about. The violence in Hotline Miami 2 being 10 times worse takes away the certain charm the violence in Hotline Miami 1 had. It goes from quaint to hideous. Also, it seems to me that it's slightly easier than Hotline Miami 1, which is good because it gets rid of some of the frustration that the first game had, with a lot of enemies coming from off screen to deck you. Another thing that brings Hotline Miami 2 down is the story, that tries to clean up the story of Hotline Miami 1. Hotline Miami is a game that needs to be left in the dark. Trying to tie up loose ends just ruins the game's charm. This game has multiple playable characters, such as the fans, the police detective, Martin Brown, the movie star, and a few other characters. I mean, sure, it's kind of nice to see the aftermath of the scenes that we see in Hotline Miami 1, but trying desperately to explain why all this happened takes away charm from both Hotline Miami 1 and Hotline Miami 2. One of the aspects of the game that's had an upgrade is the soundtrack. I actually think it's slightly better than Hotline Miami 1's soundtrack. The soundtrack is god tier, just like the first game's soundtrack. Honestly, if you don't want to play the game, just listen to the soundtrack of both games. They're honestly incredible. I'm going to give Hotline Miami 1 a 9 out of 10. Simply an amazing game that's only slightly brought down by the occasional frustration. And I'm going to give Hotline Miami 2 a 7 out of 10. Both these games are an absolute must play, and I recommend picking up the Hotline Miami collection if you see it in the wild, surrounded by broken bottle switchblades and bits of human skin.